Bismillah. Alright, good day guys. Welcome back to Kana channel. Konnichiwa minasan. Kana channel this. Right. So you probably have guessed it's another unboxing video. But in this video I am going to unbox a uh different hardware than I normally unbox, just to give an idea. It's part of uh, how should we say, part of a computer system, but oh, by the way, I'm not going to use this part of a hardware as for mining. I'm not going to use it for mining, but it is part of mining, but I'm not going to use it for mining. Okay, but I'm going to use it as mostly for gaming. Okay, most of you probably already know I'm using first generation of this type of hardware for my gaming. Okay, so I believe that I would need more powerful generation of hardware to be able to play future, or at least current AAA games without lagging, I suppose. Okay, so if I'm not mistaken, this is the second generation. Okay, second generation, if I'm not mistaken. Second generation of this type of hardware. So it will be how should I say, powerful enough to handle any current AAA games, and any games that I might be interested to play in the next maybe 5 years. It will still be able to with powerful enough to play those games. Okay, I should open here a bit so that I can easily pull it out, I suppose. Okay, all right, so there's the little sneak peek. Right, so let's check it out. Okay, all right, so this is Ryzen 7. Okay, Ryzen 7 CPU. If you can see this, AMD Ryzen 7 2700X. It has 8 cores, 16 thread processor, base 3.7 gigahertz. Okay, base, and able to boost up to 4.3 gigahertz. Right, it is not a iGPU or integrated CPU. Okay, So that's why it says it needs discrete graphic cards to be able to um, post visuals to the monitor, right? So let's take it a bit of spin and see. Includes an AMD Ryzen processor, thermal solution, installation instructions, and limit. I think it has fans also, which is not mentioned here. Okay, which is not mentioned here. The thermal solution, I need to replace it afterwards because usually AMD comes with a standard thermal paste, which is it won't last even a few years. Okay, so I will need to replace it with the MX5 thermal paste that I have, so that it will last a little bit longer. Oh, by the way, um what is it, Arctic Solution, if I'm not mistaken, the name of the brand of MX5 and MX4 is advertised to be able to it lasts as long as 8 years as advertised. Okay, oops. Okay, so what else do we have? This box includes AMD processor installation, limited warranty information, thermal solution designed for desktop PC. It doesn't say any fans here, so hopefully it has fans. Okay. Right. So there is the CPU. It says here AMD Ryzen 7 2700X. Okay, and it is made in Malaysia. Okay, it is made in Malaysia. It is the, what it says here, diffuse. It says here diffuse in USA, made in Malaysia, 2017 AMD. So basically, this type of this CPU, this model of CPU is launch. Should I say launch? Launch in 2017. Okay. But enough of that. Let's open it up and see what we have in the box. Okay. For those who are not familiar with my channel, I do play games as well, apart from mining. So if you guys interested, you can check my channel and and watch any gameplays that you might be interested. Gameplays that you might interested. Is it stuck? I don't think it's stuck. Well, do I need to pull a little bit harder maybe? Yeah, okay, alright. So this is the, I think this is the receipt maybe. Okay, it is the receipt, sale receipt, so I put it aside, and we have the fans. Okay, so let's pull out the CPU first, and there we go. That is the CPU 2700X. This is based on the Summit Ridge, if I'm not mistaken, Summit Ridge architecture, which is supposed to be compatible with my first rig motherboard. Okay, and it is specified that it can consume up to 105 watts on full power, but it can generate 3.7 gigahertz and turbo boost up to 4.3, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see it again. Okay, yeah, max boost is 4.3. So any 4 gigahertz games, 4 gigahertz processing power required games, should this CPU should be able to handle it. Just that the power consumption is very high compared to any of the same architecture of the CPU. Okay, let's put the CPU aside for a bit. Okay, put this box inside it. Okay, right, so let's put it aside and pull out the fans. Let's see what the fan looks like. All right. MGPN. What is this? Rev E. Anyway, let's see the fans. Okay. Oh, it is very massive, very big. I have to be careful with this heatsink because I think it has already installed or already have the thermal solutions on the bottom what's it called, bottom plate. uh how do I pull this out? This is for the fan power, I think, and if I'm not mistaken, this is for the what do we call it, the RGB lighting, I think. Right, so let's see, can I pull it out? Yes, should be able to pull it out. Yeah, okay. Right, so as you can see, they already applied the thermal paste, but I don't think it's a very good one. It's a standard one, at least it's a standard one, but I think this is for the RGB, I think. Yeah, I recognize the plug. This is for the RGB. Where should I plug this in if I need to yeah, okay, so basically I think this is the place, this is the socket to to um to put it, and this is for, let's see, okay, this, okay, what is this? We have one, two, three sockets. Okay, so I think this would be here, maybe, for the RGB lighting, if I'm not mistaken, but we'll get to that later on. Oh, by the way, the fans, okay, the fans have RGB lighting. So for the purpose of uh, decreasing the power consumption later for the RGB, I would like to uh, uh, what's the word for it? Switch off the RGB later for decreasing the consumption of the wattage. There's no point in how should we say? There's no point in um turning turning on the lights for the CPU just for the lighting. In my opinion, if you guys like the RGB lighting, then go ahead. Um, if you like the RGB, you can put it on. But for me, um, just to how should we say, um, decreasing the power consumption, I would like to what's the word? I would like to conserve the electricity if I can. Okay, if I can. So I'll just put this here and put it back in the box. Oops. And the cable drops. Okay. Right, so put back in the box. I'll be using it later. Why is it not in the it doesn't seem to be fitting in the box. Yes, okay. Right, so that's it. And I'll put the cover back on and put this aside in the meantime, for the meantime. Okay, and let's put it back in the box. And this is the fan for the CPU. Alright, so let's put it back in the box. I'll be using the fan later. Okay, so this is Ryzen 7. If I'm not mistaken, this is the second generation. Just because I think the number 2 in front of the model is 2, and also, if I'm not mistaken, based on what I read online, okay, this is second generation AMD Ryzen, right? So AMD Ryzen 7, even though the number 7 is there, I think it's the category category 7, second generation 2700X, right? 8 core 16 thread processor, 4.3 max boost, 3.7 gigahertz base, discrete graphic card required, which means it has no integrated graphics, right? Okay, heatsink required, right? No, not required, included. The wrong word. Okay, it is socket and 4 heatsink fan included, which is the heatsink fan that we saw just now. It has 20 megabyte smart prefetch cache unlock, right? So this is Ryzen 2700X, right? So in the next one, you will see I will try to use this in my first week and to see whether the motherboard is compatible with this CPU or not. But based on MSI website, my motherboard requires Summit Ridge type of CPU, and another one type of CPU codename. I forgot what was it, but one of it, okay, one of the two categories is Summit Ridge, and this is Summit Ridge CPU, and the highest processing power of the Summit Ridge category, right? So should be able to handle any game, but first we need to test whether it's compatible or not with my motherboard, right? So I'll see you guys. And we're back at the rig, right? So as you can see, my the original CPU is in there, So I was thinking to check the compatibility. I would need to obviously shut the rig down first and check off the CPU cooler and the CPU itself. And for the sake of testing first whether it's compatible or not, I will be putting in the 2700X, and I'll be using the same CPU fan just to check the compatibility first, whether or not the new CPU will be able to be is it compatible with the motherboard or not. In other words, using the new CPU, whether or not it will post any visuals on the monitor or not. So let's get going and let's try it out. But I will be changing the CPUs and everything behind the camera, so we will see after I put everything on. After I change it, we will see whether or not it's compatible or not. Alright, so we have pull out the original or the previous CPU. As you can see, 1400 Ryzen 1400, and I put it in the 2700X. Right, so just to let you know, that is the CPU fan. Okay, so this is a new thing that I discovered, right? So I am using the MX5 thermal paste for my CPU as well. Okay, for my CPU as well. It turns out it's very difficult to pull out the CPU fans because of the how sticky the CPU, the thermal paste. Okay, so even though the screws, four screws or the CPU fans is unfastened, I already opened it, but I could not take out the CPU fan because of how sticky the thermal paste is between the heatsink and the surface of the CPU. So I tried to put a little bit more force into pulling it out. It turns out that the CPU, I pull it out. Eventually, I can pull it out. But the thing is, I pull out the CPU fan along with the CPU itself. So I did look at below the CPU. I took a look. I did not see any bent pins. Okay, so hopefully the CPU is okay. So that is very dangerous. Okay, so a note to myself and anyone who is listening: do not use a very sticky thermal paste, because you might eventually you pull the CPU fan along with the CPU while the CPU is locked. Okay, it is very dangerous. So instead of using MX5, okay, thermal paste, use the MX4 thermal paste. Okay, unless you know the CPU that you are going to be using, will be staying on the motherboard until it dies. Then you can use the MX5. But
if you know that you'll be going to maybe get a chance to upgrade your CPU or whatnot, I recommend you use the MX4. It is more, how should we say, easier. It doesn't stick very hard to the surface of in between. Okay, for example, the GPUs, for example, 3070s with three fans, for example, okay, you will not be changing the thermal paste anytime soon between 8 years. Okay, you should be okay. But unless you'll be going to changing your CPU, for example, changing your CPU for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. For example, you bought a 5600 Ryzen 5600, and the new Ryzen came out. You want to change it again, change it again, change it again. I suggest do not use MX5 as your thermal paste. Okay, you could ruin your CPU pins, right? It's better to use the MX4 because MX4 is less sticky, so you don't have to put much force into pulling the CPU fans out from the CPU, which is uh, safer for the CPU, right? Right. So back to the topic we were talking about, right? So the CPU is in, okay, and let's try to put in the CPU fans and see whether or not it will boot. But for the meantime, let's just try the previous CPU fans just to see whether or not it will boot or not. And if it boots, I'll be using the CPU fan that comes with the 2700. But for the meantime, let's test it whether it's compatible with the motherboard or not, right? Alright, so I'll test it behind the cameras. I'll see you in a bit. Right, so we have the CPU fan put on, right? So let's see if it pulls or not on the monitor, right? So moment of truth. Bismillah. All right, to switch on, and we will see whether or not it boots, it posts on the monitor or not. Let's give it a second to check out the new CPU, whether or not it can be used by the monitor or not. Yeah, finally. And we have Amd Ryzen 7 2700X 8 core. Right. So before I change anything to continue, let's try see in the BIOS. There it is. 3.7, 3.7. We have 3.7 gigahertz. Right, CPU. Let's see. Let's see how does. Okay, the temperature is at 37, which is quite low, which is good actually, which is good because I have the MX5 thermal paste in the CPU fan, in the heatsink of the CPU fan, which is good. It stays down 38. Oh, it's coming up 38. Okay, let's see what else do we have. In terms of the CPU, any other information that we have in the CPU? Um, nope. Anything else that comes with the CPU? Uh, PCI, ACP, integrated peripherals, integrated graphics. We don't have any integrated graphics on the CPU, so there's nothing. Super IO, power configurations, power management. Mm, okay, the CPU temperature is climbing 40 Celsius. Uh, Anything else that comes with the CPU? Any other functions? Maybe not. Overclock settings. I don't want to mess with CPU settings, so I just let it be. If anything that I need to change, I will change inside Windows. So that's about it, I think. Let's see, board explorer, hardware monitor. Um, okay, the temperature is climbing 42 Celsius. CPU core 1.4. Anything else that I need to know? Board explorer. Let's see. Okay, we do have 2700X 8 core. Right. So I guess this is a how should we say, a success. Okay, so it is a success. For um let's try to see if the CPU fan is able to uh, how should we say, um, cool down the CPU. CPU is at 43 now. Okay, so let's try. Uh, we'll put this at 5966. This one will be at 44, I think. Should I use it? So should I send it at um, 44, I think. Okay, so let's put this at 99% at 71. Um, will the temperature drop? I don't know. It's still climbing 44 now. It is a powerful CPU after all. Consumed at 105 watts. Compared to the 1400 Ryzen 1400, which is, if I'm not mistaken, 65 watts. Don't quote me on that. You need to check it yourself. Alright, so let's try full speed ahead. Okay, full speed ahead. Will the temperature go down? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. 42, yes, it goes down. So, but anyway, on idle, the CPU temperature is very high because it is on the 105 watts consumption CPU category. So obviously on idle, especially on gaming. If I'm gaming, I do need the CPU to be cool at all times, because if it gets too hot, the game will lag, obviously. And if the CPU temperature goes up too high, for example 85 Celsius, the CPU will automatically shut down the whole system. Operating temperature is at 85, right? So obviously I will need to use the massive heatsink that the CPU comes with. But just for the sake of testing, let's see. I need to change this back. Okay. Um, let's just put it on full speed, all full speed, and let's see for a bit the the performance on Windows. I need to change this to enable um, power management, enable power last state. Okay, right. So we have CPU temperature is at 39, right? All right. Let's just try it on Windows for the sake of testing. My hands are getting tired. Okay, holding the camera. Anyway, let's just test it and see how it performs for a little while on Windows. Hopefully nothing happens. Okay, so hopefully nothing bad happens. All right, we have arrived in Windows, and let's see the task manager. What kind of performance do we get? Ooh, okay, it's climbing very high, 4 gigahertz. 4 gigahertz, that is very high. Base speed at 3.7, and it can go up to 4 gigahertz. No, no. Okay, which is insane, 4 gigahertz compared to 3.2 gigahertz. Okay, let's see if we can limit the speed a bit, because base speed at 3.7, but the speed right now is 4 gigahertz, 4.1 gigahertz. Okay, so the ratio is at 3.7 gigahertz, so it can go up to 4.1 gigahertz on its own. Okay, that is peculiar. Okay. VRAM game boost. So as you can see here, the temperature right now is 61, which is very high. It's better I put the camera down. Okay, so as you can see, the temperature is climbing up. So most definitely I need to use the larger heatsink. Okay, so basically it is set at 33.7 gigahertz, but it can climb up on its own 4.1 gigahertz, which is very peculiar. I don't think it has its own instructions to be able to go up to 4.1 on its own. All right, it has 8 cores, which is a lot, which is good actually. Okay, so any information on the CPU that I can look at? Okay, Pinnacle Ridge. Oh, okay. I was mistaken. Not the Summit Ridge. This is the Pinnacle Ridge category, CPU category. It's a Pinnacle Ridge, not a Summit Ridge. Okay, so based on, if I'm not mistaken, the my motherboard can support Pinnacle Ridge and Summit Ridge type of CPU. So among the two categories, 2700X is the most fastest CPU suitable for my motherboard. So that's why I bought this 2700X. Just for me to be able to play games, AAA games. I don't use my CPU for mining. I use my GPUs for mining. So my CPU just handles the simple task of every day, including mining. But the mining is more GPU based, GPU load type of mining. So my CPU just handles low loads of processors. So alright, so we have 2700X 8 core. Core speed is 4.2. If I'm not mistaken, just now the max boost is at 4.3 gigahertz. Okay, so it is 8 core processor, and what else do I need to know about this CPU? It's 12 nanometer. Okay, obviously, uh, that's a good information. 12 nanometer type of technology. How about the wattage? Do you have any information about the wattage? Wattage consumption? No. Uh, let's see what we have in the Corsair. Any information regarding the CPU wattage? Uh, this is temperature. What is this? 102. Right now is at what? 110. It is supposed to be temperature, right? But I think it's in Fahrenheit, not in Celsius. Anyway, any information regarding the CPU wattage consumption? Maybe, maybe not, maybe. Uh, let's see, CPU ID. Do you have any information regarding it? Okay, let's see. CPU. Any wattage? There it is, 105. That is the max TDP, max wattage. But right now, it should consume how much on idle? Uh, any information regarding that? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I just want to check the wattage consumption on idle. If it has anything regarding that information. Let's see. Any information at all regarding idle wattage consumption? Um, no, we do not have. Anyway, right. So, that is the unboxing and testing of the 2700X 8-core processor Ryzen. So hopefully you guys have any. Hopefully you guys get beneficial information from this. Even though it says base speed is 3.7, it doesn't necessarily stays at 3.7, but it can go up to 4.1 gigahertz above the base speed clock, right? So, but in any case, if you guys need extra power, extra processing power, you can tune it up if you have MSI command center, for example, or if you use MSI Dragon Center below MSI Dragon Center. Okay, you can change it to a little bit higher, at least 4.3. Okay, for 2700, for example, 2700X. You can tune it up a little bit more uh, towards on par on the same line or on the same speed as the max turbo specification, or slightly just below, to keep it, how should you say, not at full load, as not to wear the CPU too much wear and tear, if you understand what I'm saying. The wear and tear, so just put a little bit below the turbo speed. The CPU is at 2700X. CPU Ryzen 2700X is rated at max turbo 4.3, so you can set it 4.2, okay, for maximum speed, almost maximum speed, but just below the full load, to control a little bit of the wear and tear of the CPU, just in case, right? So hopefully you guys get beneficial information from this. If you enjoyed the video, considering subscribe and give me a like, thumbs up, right? And I'll see you guys in the next one, right? Take care, guys. Bye bye.